First of all, let's just deal with your new alert that's coming out, I think, at 3 p.m. We had some reports in the Telegraph actually yesterday suggesting that this alert system might be hacked. We've had a situation over in Florida where people were woken up at 4:45 a.m. for nothing. Are you worried about the security of this new alert system?
No, I'm not, Camilla, and actually it is the case that this has been developed with the National Cyber Security Centre, which forms part of GCHQ. There will be very strict procedures in place for its authorisation, and it will only be used in a situation where your viewers' lives are in danger. I'm determined that there is a very high bar for the usage of this.
OK. Congratulations on your new role as Deputy Prime Minister. What's your conclusion, having read Adam Tolley's report? Is Dominic Raab a bully, do you think?
Well, as you say, Adam Tolley conducted a very extensive investigation, 48 pages of it. There's not a great deal that I can add to his very specific conclusions. What I would say is that my experience of working with Dom Raab, and I pay tribute, for example, to how he conducted himself when Boris was very ill. We all remember, and I certainly remember it very well, he stepped up to the plate then. He's also a man of his word, and he said that if there was an adverse finding against him, he would resign, and that's exactly what he's done, and the Prime Minister has accepted that.
Is he a bully, though?
As I say to you, Camilla, Adam Tolley has been through all the facts of this, and by the way, he's done it in an anonymised way, so I don't know the detailed facts of the case. I can only rely on what he's said. He's produced very clear conclusions. Dom is a man of his word and said that if there was an adverse finding against him, he would resign, and that's exactly what he's done. And I think we're now in the situation where the case is kind of closed. We move on from it.
Well, we can't really move on from it, can we? Because Mr. Raab has not gone quietly. He's made a number of allegations about the impartiality of the civil service. He's called for a leak inquiry. Presumably you would support a leak inquiry, Mr. Dowden?
Well, certainly it is the case, and I think that was accepted in some of the report from Tolley and has been said by Dom as well. It is totally unacceptable if civil servants are leaking or putting false narratives out into the media, and I would expect the Cabinet Secretary to look into that. I also think it's the case that the whole episode has demonstrated to me that we do need a clearer, simpler and fairer investigation system, and we will be looking into exactly that.
Do you agree with Mr. Raab that there are perhaps activist civil servants who have been egged on by the FDA union to make these claims against Tories?
Well, that has not been my experience, but what I would say coming out of this is I'm absolutely determined that, for example, the sort of high standards that I expect of civil servants who work for me should not be diluted in any way. And I think senior civil servants, just like senior ministers, need to recognise that they are there to serve the British people, and the vast majority of civil servants that I've worked with understand that, and we cannot out of this allow some kind of lowering of standards, and the Prime Minister and I are absolutely determined to uphold the highest standards for the British people and to robustly challenge our civil servants in an appropriate fashion.
Is the government better or worse off without Dominic Raab?
Well, I worked with Dom a great deal, and I think in terms of what he did, both in the Ministry of Justice as the Foreign Secretary, and particularly going back to that time when Boris was very ill. I always remember, actually, the Cabinet Secretary phoning us up to tell us that the Prime Minister was now in hospital. It was a real touch-and-go situation for a time, and Dom calmly and confidently took control of the situation when the country was in a very difficult position, and I think we owe him a debt of gratitude for what he did during that time. So
has the Prime Minister made a mistake in not insisting that he stays on? I mean, he's clearly a useful minister. Adam Tolley talked about him putting in a shift. He works from 7:30 a.m. till 10, 11 at night. I mean, he's clearly robust in his exercising over officials, whether or not you like his style. So what's Rishi Sunak doing here? He's just caved into civil servant snowflakes, hasn't he?
Well, I know how hard Dom worked, and indeed, contrary to what some of your viewers may think, many of us who are fortunate enough to hold high ministerial office work those pretty relentless hours to make sure we're serving the British people. But one of the characteristics of Dom is he is a man of his word, and Dom said that if there were adverse findings against him, he would resign, and the Prime Minister accepted that. And I think that that's where we are now, and the situation has kind of been resolved in that way.
Would you like to see him return to Cabinet at some point, though?
Well, I've learnt over the years that the decisions as to who's in Cabinet or who isn't in Cabinet are solely in the preserve of the Prime Minister. But what I do know is that the Prime Minister holds him in great affection. But that's a matter for the Prime Minister.
Deputy Prime Minister, does it worry you that we still have a situation where half of civil servants, this is according to the government's own data, still haven't returned to their desks since the pandemic?
Well, it's always been my experience of working. I certainly found this during the COVID crisis. I had a few days of trying to run a major government department from the proverbial spare bedroom that's been converted into an office for me. It just doesn't work, and you need to have that human interaction. So certainly I sought to return for my core team back to the office as rapidly as we can. And I think actually for young people, having the experience of working with other people together is a way of enhancing their confidence and enhancing their careers. And I think, particularly in my younger years, how much pleasure, frankly, I got from working closely with colleagues who became friends and the creative process that followed from it. Now,
well,
of course, there's always going to be circumstances where it's fine to work from home if you've got some detailed report to write or something like that. So, Camilla, just let me finish this point, because I think it's important just to be absolutely clear about it. If you're kind of working on a complex report or something like that, it's perfectly acceptable to work from home on that basis. But my disposition is that we should be continuing the process of getting more and more people back into the office, whilst accepting there are circumstances when it makes more sense for people to be able to work at home. I don't want to be dictatorial about this, but I think it's in everyone's interest that if you're doing collaborative work together.
Well, you're the Deputy Prime Minister now, so why aren't you fixing it? I mean, it can't be a satisfactory set of circumstances that you've got, for instance, only 39% of officials at DEFRA actually at their desks. We've all had to go back to work. What's the civil services excuse?
Well, we are expecting more and more people to go back, and more people are going back. I've been very clear about that, and we are, if you look at the numbers of civil servants who are back at their desks, they are rising. As I said, it's not going to be a total blanket position where you expect people to be in the office the entire time, just like in the private sector. Many of your viewers and other people engaging with this show will know that in the modern workplace, you do some of your stuff in the office and you do some of it at home. And I think we need to have a proportionate balance. But, I feel instinctively that there's a lot to be drawn from working in the office.
Well, Oliver Dowden, thank you very much for not being at home and for being on the show this morning.